The unforgettable songs that turned 62 hits from 1964. These songs turned 62 years old this year. And if you already know the titles, you may think you already know the stories. You don't. Not fully. This is a countdown of 10 unforgettable hits from 1964. What I am going to tell you about the people who made them is what nobody thought to put in the liner notes. Number 10, The Drifters, Under the Boardwalk, 1964. Before I tell you about Under the Boardwalk, I need to tell you about the man who was supposed to sing it. His name was Rudy Lewis. And if you have spent any real time with early 60s R&B, I mean really spent time with it, you know his voice. You know Up on the Roof. You know On Broadway. You know Some Kind of Wonderful. That voice, warm, gospel-rooted, carrying the weight of someone who had sung for congregations before he ever sang for a recording studio. That was Rudy Lewis. He was the Drifters. He was the sound. On May 20th, 1964, Under the Boardwalk was scheduled to be recorded the following morning. The song had been written knowing his voice. The session was booked, the musicians were arranged, the studio was waiting. And that night, Rudy Lewis died, alone, in his Harlem hotel room, a suspected overdose. He was 27 years old. Hold that for a moment. The next morning, the group gathered at the Atlantic Records studio anyway, not to mourn, to record. Another lead vocalist, Johnny Moore, was brought in, and by the end of that session, they had cut one of the most beloved songs of the decade, the summer record that would peak at number 4 on the Hot 100. Rudy Lewis was not there to hear a single note of it. And I need you to hold something else alongside his name. The Drifters, the group whose records you know, whose name endures, were always owned by a manager named George Treadwell. Not the singers, Treadwell, which meant he could replace anyone at any time, which meant the men who built that sound were, in the eyes of the business, interchangeable. Which meant that when Rudy Lewis died, they did not pause. They replaced him by 8 in the morning. That is what the industry determined he was worth. His voice is on those records. The records live forever. If the Drifters were in your house growing up, if this music was part of your world, you already understand what I mean when I say that Rudy Lewis's voice held something sacred. And he died at 27, and the session he was supposed to lead went on without him. Number 9, Betty Everett. The Shoop Shoop song, It's in His Kiss, 1964. Let me tell you who Betty Everett was before I tell you what happened. She was a soul singer from Greenwood, Mississippi, who made her way to Chicago and recorded one of the most purely joyful R&B singles of 1964. A song with a hook so immediate, so undeniable, that it still stops people in stores and cars and kitchens 62 years later. The Shoop Shoop song, It's in His Kiss, entered the Billboard Hot 100 in February of 1964. By April, it had peaked at number 6 on the pop chart. On the Cashbox R&B chart, which, at the time, was the more precise measure of what black radio was actually playing, it hit number 1. Betty Everett gave that song everything. Her delivery was not sophisticated in the way the era sometimes prized sophistication. It was better than that. It was alive. It moved the way joy actually moves, a little imprecise, a little reckless, completely committed. And then, in 1990, Cher recorded her version for the film Mermaids, and Cher's version hit number 1 in the United Kingdom. By 1991, most people on the planet who heard the words, the Shoop Shoop song, thought of Cher. Betty Everett died on August 19, 2001. She was 61 years old. She died quietly in Beloit, Wisconsin, where she had spent her final years living with her sister. There was no farewell tour, no tribute concert, no obituary that made front pages. And I want to be precise about what I am saying here. Betty Everett did not make a bad record and get passed over. She made a number 1 R&B record, a great one. And 26 years later, another artist recorded that same song, and the version the world came to remember, the version most people associate with that melody, is not Betty Everett's. The music survived, just not under her name. That is not how it was supposed to work.
Real talk. Only 9% of you are subscribed. That hurts. We're spending hours digging through archives, fact-checking every detail, bringing these stories back to life. And if you're watching this far, you clearly care. So hit subscribe. It's free and takes 2 seconds. Now, to my subscribers, barely any of you have joined the membership. And honestly, that stings even more. You know the work we put in. You keep coming back. If these videos have ever made you feel something, if this music means something to you, join the membership. It's $1 coffee a month, and it's the only way we keep this going. Let's build this together. All right, back to it.
Number 8, The Impressions, Keep on Pushing, 1964. Before I tell you about Keep on Pushing, I need you to understand what Curtis Mayfield was attempting in 1964. He was attempting to say something true in a pop record that mainstream radio would actually play. He was attempting to put the language of the civil rights movement into a melody so deep and so graceful that it could not be turned away, regardless of what the lyrics were actually asking of the listener. He almost made it look easy. Keep on Pushing was released in 1964 on ABC Paramount Records. It peaked at number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100. On the Cashbox R&B chart, it held number 1 for 2 weeks. The album of the same name became the group's biggest commercial achievement, reaching number 8 on the Billboard 200. And Martin Luther King Jr., named it among the movement's unofficial anthems. On the Freedom Ride buses, traveling into an unfriendly American South, Keep on Pushing was the song people sang to hold themselves together. Mayfield originally wrote it as a gospel composition. He only changed one line to make it secular. One line. And the gospel foundation held everything together. The call, the response, the absolute conviction that the push was righteous and that the destination was real. I need to say something now that I am going to return to later in this list. There is one story among these 10 where what happened was not neglect, not carelessness, not an industry that failed to pay attention. It was something more deliberate, something done with intention. I am not going to say which entry that is, not yet, but I need you to hold the distinction. There is a difference between what was withheld and what was taken. We will get there. Curtis Mayfield was paralyzed in 1990 when a lighting tower collapsed on him during a concert in Brooklyn, New York. He continued to record music while lying flat on his back, breathing between vocal lines. He died in 1999 at 57, having given everything to the music and to the movement that depended on it. The song turned 62 this year. The man who wrote it deserved a monument in every room it has ever played in. Number 7, the Valentinos. It's All Over Now, 1964. Let me tell you who Bobby Womack was in 1964. He was 20 years old. He was the lead vocalist and guitarist of a family group, the Valentinos, managed and produced by Sam Cooke, signed to Sam Cooke's own SAR Records label. Five brothers raised in the gospel tradition, all of them learning to channel something sacred into something the world could hear on a radio. Bobby Womack wrote It's All Over Now with his sister-in-law Shirley Womack. The Valentinos recorded it on March 24, 1964. Sam Cooke produced it. The group released it in May of that year, and it began climbing the R&B charts. It was rising when the Rolling Stones arrived. June 1964. The Stones were in New York on their first North American tour. A radio DJ named Murray the K played them the Valentinos record. 9 days later, the Rolling Stones recorded their own version at Chess Studios in Chicago. Their version was released in July. It hit number 1 in the United Kingdom. It was their first number 1 hit, ever. It gave them the commercial foundation for everything that followed. Bobby Womack was furious. Sam Cooke sat him down. This group is going to be huge, Cooke told him. The longer they live, the bigger they're going to get. You introduced them. He convinced Womack that the royalties would come, that there was wisdom in waiting. And whether Sam Cooke was right about the long term, Bobby Womack later said he came around after the first royalty check arrived. But I want to say clearly what most people won't. A 20-year-old black artist in 1964 did not have the power to stop a British band from taking his record to number 1, while his own version peaked at number 94 on the pop chart. The power was not his to exercise. The structure did not give it to him. He wrote the song. He recorded it first. He gave it everything. And the world heard someone else's name attached to it. The Valentinos. Remember that name. Before the Stones ever set foot in Chess Studios, there were 5 brothers in a Hollywood recording studio, singing something they had built together. Number 6, Dionne Warwick. Walk On By, 1964. Let me tell you who Dionne Warwick was in the spring of 1964. She was the voice, the one Burt Bacharach and Hal David had built an entire musical architecture around, because no one else could carry what they were writing. The intervals they chose, the harmonic complexity they insisted on, the emotional precision their songs demanded, Warwick was the only singer who made it all sound inevitable. Walk On By was released April 26, 1964. It reached number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100. On the Cashbox R&B chart, it held number 1. It was nominated for a Grammy the following year. Rolling Stone would eventually rank it among the 50 greatest songs ever recorded. In 1998, it was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame. These are the numbers. Now let me give you the human frame. Warwick was bound to Scepter Records. Bacharach and David controlled the publishing. The songs she made famous, songs that will last as long as popular music lasts, were not hers to keep in the ways that matter. And in the United Kingdom, where her records should have broken her wide open, label executives were already deciding that British artists should record Bacharach-David songs rather than promote Warwick's own versions. Cilla Black's version of Anyone Who Had a Heart, Warwick's song recorded first by Warwick, hit number 1 in the UK. Warwick described the feeling as being insulted. She was right to feel that way. And I want to be precise about what I am saying. This is not an accusation against individual people. This is a description of an industry structure that routinely treated Black artists' music as raw material, something to be refined into commercial product by other hands, in other markets. Warwick was not the only one on this list. She will not be the last. When Bacharach and David ended their partnership in the early 1970s, Warwick filed a $5.5 million lawsuit against them for breach of contract. The voice that built the cathedral had to sue to be paid what she was owed. She was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2024 at 83 years old, still touring, still the voice. Walk On By turned 62 this year. It lives. And for 62 years, the royalties for that recording have gone primarily to the writers, not to the person who made it live in the first place. Number 5, Solomon Burke. Everybody Needs Somebody to Love, 1964. You know this song. You may know it through the Rolling Stones, who covered it in 1965. You may know it through the Blues Brothers, who performed it in the 1980 film. That opening, the spoken testimony, the communal call to everyone in the room, the absolute insistence that love is not optional, you know it. But knowing the song and knowing what it cost to make it, those are two different kinds of knowing. Let me give you the second one. Solomon Burke was born into a church family in Philadelphia. He began performing as a child, billed as the Wonder Boy Preacher, before he was a teenager. He carried the gospel into soul music without discarding either tradition. He was, in every essential way, one of the men who invented what we now call soul music. Atlantic Records in 1964 crowned him King of Rock and Soul at a ceremony during a performance. And yet, he wrote Everybody Needs Somebody to Love in the tradition of a church offering march. The rhythm, the call and response, the absolute insistence that you bring something forward and lay it down. He brought it to Jerry Wexler and Burt Burns at Atlantic. And here is where the story tightens. Solomon Burke says he wrote that song alone. What was released credited 3 songwriters, Burke, Burns, and Wexler. Burke says he was pressured into sharing credit he had not shared in the creation. The record was released in July of 1964. It peaked at number 58 on the pop chart. Number 58. The Stones covered it. Their version became the one most people remember. Wilson Pickett recorded it in 1966 and gave Burke a spoken shout-out at the beginning of his recording, a public acknowledgement that the original belonged to a man the charts had not properly served. Solomon Burke kept working. He preached. He performed, he ran a funeral home, he released albums across 6 decades. In 2002, at 61 years old, he finally won a Grammy for a record he made with Elvis Costello and Tom Waits and Bob Dylan. He died on September 10, 2010, at Amsterdam's Schiphol Airport. He was still on tour. That is what devotion to the work looks like when the work does not always return the devotion. Rolling Stone ranks Everybody Needs Somebody to Love among the 429 greatest songs ever recorded. Solomon Burke's original 1964 recording peaked at 58. This name deserves to be in your memory after today. Solomon Burke. Number 4, Martha Reeves and the Vandellas, Dancing in the Street, 1964. Before Dancing in the Street was anything, before it was an anthem, before it was in the Grammy Hall of Fame, before a single word was written about what it meant to a movement, let me tell you who Martha Reeves was. She was a singer from Eufaula, Alabama, raised on Detroit's East Side. She had worked as a secretary at Motown before she was allowed to make records for Motown. She had the kind of voice that you built a microphone toward, not away from, big and decisive and fully committed to whatever she gave it. When the song came to her in 1964, she reshaped it. Marvin Gaye had been singing it in a way that felt intimate, almost like a love song. Martha Reeves heard block parties, she heard Mardi Gras, she heard the full weight of what summer sounds like in a city that believes in itself. She asked the producers to let her interpret it her own way. They captured it in 2 takes. Dancing in the Street was released July 31st, 1964, written by Marvin Gaye, Mickey Stevenson, and Ivy Jo Hunter. It hit number 1 on the R&B chart and number 2 on the Hot 100, held from the top only by Manfred Mann's Do Wah Diddy Diddy. It spent 14 weeks on the chart. If Dancing in the Street was in your life growing up, if it was in your house, on your parents' records, coming out of a neighbor's window on a summer day, you already know what sound Martha Reeves gave to this music. What you may not know is how long she had to wait to be paid for giving it. In 1989, Martha Reeves and members of her group sued Motown Records for unpaid royalties. The lawsuit was settled in 1991. The amount was never disclosed publicly. What I can tell you is that a settlement coming at all means something was owed, something was withheld. From The Woman Who Turned Two takes into a song that would be inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 1999 and placed into the National Recording Registry by the Library of Congress in 2006. I need you to hold that for a moment. She built Dancing in the Street into something that outlasted every chart position, every era, every cultural moment it was assigned to. She built it. And then she had to go to court to prove it was hers to benefit from. The song turned 62 years old this year. It is still everywhere. Martha Reeves is still here. She deserved to be celebrated from the very beginning. Number 3, Mary Wells, My Guy, 1964. Let me tell you who Mary Wells was. She was the Queen of Motown. That is not a title she gave herself. That is what the label called her. Because what she brought to Smokey Robinson's songs during the first years of Motown's existence was the sound of a label finding its identity. She was born May 13, 1943, in Detroit. She signed her first Motown contract at 17 years old, a child, in the eyes of the law, when she made the agreement that would define the first decade of her life. My Guy was released March 13, 1964. Smokey Robinson wrote it for her. Smokey Robinson produced it. And Mary Wells delivered it so completely, with such effortless conviction, that it hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 the week of May 16th. On the Cashbox R&B chart, it held number 1 for 7 weeks. It was the number 1 R&B single of the entire year. The Beatles named her their favorite early Motown artist. She toured with them in the United Kingdom later that year, and on the very week that My Guy was sitting at number 1, the week of May 13, 1964, Mary Wells turned 21. Her contract had a clause allowing her to leave at 21, and she left. She signed with 20th Century Fox Records. The deal offered a $500,000 contract and the possibility of film roles. She was 21 years old. She had just had the biggest hit of her career, and she believed, reasonably, humanly, that she was only beginning. She never had another hit as big as My Guy. Not on Fox, not on Atlantic, not on Atco, not on Jubilee, never. And I will say clearly what most people won't. The money made from My Guy was reportedly redirected toward promoting another Motown act. She was 21 when she made the decision that ended her trajectory. The institution she walked away from was not 21. It knew exactly what it was doing, and it was already moving on. In the late 1980s, Mary Wells was diagnosed with laryngeal cancer. She had no medical insurance. She lost her home when she could not pay the rent. The Rhythm and Blues Foundation raised money for her medical bills. Diana Ross gave $15,000. Rod Stewart gave $10,000. Bruce Springsteen gave $10,000. The Queen of Motown needed a fundraiser. She died on July 26, 1992. She was 49 years old. The music got everything. The music lasted, and the name that belongs alongside it, the name that made it what it is, deserves to be said as loudly as the song is played. Number 2, Florence Ballard / The Supremes. Where Did Our Love Go? 1964. Let me tell you who Florence Ballard was before this song existed. She was a young woman from Detroit, raised in a family of 13 children in a segregated housing project, who loved to sing the way some people love to breathe, because it was what kept her alive. She met 2 girls in her neighborhood, Mary Wilson and a girl then called Diane, not yet Diana, Ross. Together, they formed the Premettes. Together, they knocked on doors at Motown. Together, they became the Supremes. Florence Ballard named the group. Their first 8 singles did not chart. And then, in 1964, Holland Dozier Holland brought them a song the Marvelettes had already turned down. The Supremes themselves were skeptical. They recorded it anyway. And Where Did Our Love Go? Hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the summer of 1964 and stayed there, launching 3 more number 1 singles before the year was over. This name deserves to be said slowly, Florence Ballard, because what came next was not an accident. Berry Gordy had decided that Diana Ross would be the public face of the group. Florence Ballard, whose voice Otis Williams of The Temptations said had a real depth of feeling and strong churchy sound that made you sit up straight when she opened her mouth to sing, was moved to the background, made a backing vocalist in the group she had co-founded, in the group she had named. She was eventually replaced, not told directly. Gordy was already preparing another singer, Cindy Birdsong, while Ballard was still technically in the lineup. The group was then rebranded as Diana Ross and the Supremes. Florence Ballard's name disappeared from the marquee. She tried a solo career. She signed with ABC Records. 2 singles, neither charted. She lost the contract, and then the money ran out, and the marriage dissolved, and the legal battles with Motown consumed her, and the drinking got worse. I told you at entry number 8 that there was one story on this list that was not about what the industry failed to provide. Not neglect, not carelessness, something done with intention. This is that story. Florence Ballard was not overlooked. She was not forgotten. She was replaced, by design, by a man who held the power and used it without hesitation. There is a difference between carelessness and decision. What happened to Florence Ballard was a decision. She died on February 22, 1976. She was 32 years old. She died penniless. She left 3 daughters. More than 5,000 people came to her funeral. Not because the industry honored her, but because the people knew. They always knew. Number 1, Sam Cooke, A Change Is Gonna Come, 1964. He was the first black pop artist to own his own record label. He built it, SAR Records, so that the music he created could exist without the industry standing between the creator and the ownership. He built his own publishing company for the same reason. He understood, with a clarity very few artists of his era possessed, that the only real protection is structural, not goodwill, not relationships, ownership. He had 29 top 40 hits between 1957 and 1964. He refused to perform in front of segregated audiences, one of the first organized acts of civil disobedience in popular music. He campaigned alongside Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X. And then, October 8, 1963, Sam Cooke and his entourage arrived at a Holiday Inn in Shreveport, Louisiana, where he had a reservation. He was one of the most famous artists in America. They turned him away because of the color of his skin. He composed A Change Is Gonna Come in the months that followed. He recorded it on January 30th, 1964, at RCA Studios in Hollywood, a full orchestral arrangement built to carry everything he needed to say. A week later, he performed it once, on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and then he never sang it in public again. His friend Bobby Womack said it sounded like death. Cooke didn't argue. He understood what it was, and what saying it out loud might cost. On December 11, 1964, Sam Cooke was shot and killed at the Hacienda Motel in Los Angeles. He was 33 years old. The verdict was justifiable homicide. The details of that night remain disputed. "11 days later, December 22, 1964, A Change Is Gonna Come was released as a single. He never heard it on the radio. I know, I felt the same way when I found that. And before it was released, the verse he wrote about being turned away, about going downtown and being told, "Don't hang around," was removed from the radio version. Even in death, the industry was negotiating with the truth of what he had said. The music outlasted the man who made it by 11 days. This is his story, told properly, finally.